Welcome, deep divers. Today we're really diving into a challenge that, well, it gnaws at pretty much all of us. How do we make those truly informed, high-stakes decisions? When the future is just, well, it's a fog of uncertainty. And maybe more surprisingly, how can cutting-edge AI actually become like our most trusted partner in cutting through some of that fog? Okay, I want you to picture someone, let's call her Lena. She's staring down a classic fork in the road, right? A dilemma I bet many of you listening have faced, or maybe you're facing right now. On one path, there's this rock-solid, predictable job, good progression, clear benefits. It's the comfort zone. But on the other path, the exhilarating, definitely high-risk world of a startup. And this isn't just any startup. It's got this groundbreaking idea, a really charismatic team, but the cold, hard reality is, well, it's all about the odds. Her mind is just a tempest, Excitement for what could be, battling this gnawing fear of failure. She's replaying past wins, past mistakes, trying to picture these two vastly different future selves. And that emotional tug of war, it's almost paralyzing.
How do you truly, rationally, weigh up like a 30% chance of thriving against a 70% chance of faltering? Especially when your gut is just screaming with both hope and dread. What Lena's struggling with, and frankly, what makes so many of us stumble, is this profound difficulty. How do we translate abstract probabilities, those percentages, into tangible choices in our daily lives? And it's a paradox, really, because as we're going to unpack today, your brain, deep down, is actually this incredibly sophisticated Bayesian machine. It's constantly crunching probabilities. So the big question is, why do we feel so challenged? Why can't we consciously tap into that innate probabilistic powerhouse when it matters most? Why does that rational voice sometimes just get drowned out by all the emotional noise?
It's a truly fascinating question. Really gets to the heart of how we think, doesn't it? The very architecture of our cognition. Imagine your brain, okay? Not just as like a computer, but as your own personal, incredibly advanced weather forecaster. It's just ceaselessly predicting, updating, revising its internal models of the world all the time. Just like, a weather app anticipates rain or sun based on huge amounts of atmospheric data, your brain is doing something similar, but on a grander, more personal scale. Every single moment is predicting what you'll see, hear, feel next. Its fundamental mission, really, is to minimize surprise. And when reality deviates from those predictions, when that predicted sunshine turns into unexpected rain, it quickly updates its internal model. It learns to better anticipate things next time. It's this subconscious, really intricate process happening constantly.
Wow. So, okay, our brains are doing all this complex prediction stuff in the background like a silent supercomputer, but we feel completely ill-equipped to consciously use probabilities for our biggest life choices. That right there, that's the gap, isn't it? That's the gap we want to bridge today. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore exactly that. How can we connect our deeply intuitive human nature with that powerful underlying probabilistic capacity? So, what are you going to discover? Well, we're going on a journey through the fascinating neuroscience of prediction. Then we'll delve into the, let's face it, often surprising psychology of human decision-making, all those biases we have. From there, we'll explore some really cutting-edge AI benchmarks, things like Profit Arena, and the incredible power of collective forecasting platforms like Metaculus. Have you heard of Metaculus? Amazing stuff.
Oh yeah, Metaculus is fascinating. The wisdom of crowds, quantified.
Well, exactly. And ultimately, we'll unpack this revolutionary idea. AI is a genuine cognitive partner, a way to truly scale up, to engage our slower, more analytical system two thinking in everyday life. Not just for Lena's big career choice, but for your health decisions, your finances, even your relationships. And look, this isn't just theory. We're talking practical, actionable insights for your most important decisions. Ready? Let's dive in.
Okay, let's really unpack this idea. Our brain as a prediction machine. It sounds almost sci-fi, but you're saying this isn't some future concept. It's actually happening right now, inside our heads all the time.
Exactly, right now as you're listening. From a neuroscience perspective, the brain isn't just passively soaking up information like a sponge. It's fundamentally what researchers call a probabilistic prediction engine. It's constantly generating hypotheses about what's coming next. This is the core idea of the predictive coding framework. It's a really influential concept pushed forward by people like Carl Friston back in 2010 and Andy Clark in 2016. What they argue, and there's a lot of evidence backing this up now, is that our brains are constantly making predictions about the sensory data we're about to receive.
Right.
And then it checks those predictions against what actually happens. When there's a mismatch, that's called a prediction error, the brain doesn't just notice it. It uses that error signal to quickly update its internal models. Why? To minimize surprise next time, to become more accurate in its next guess. It's always learning, always refining.
Okay, so it's guessing, checking, and correcting constantly.
Pretty much. Think of it like an ongoing, incredibly efficient Bayesian-like inference process. You know Bayesian statistics. Updating beliefs with new evidence.
Vaguely, yeah. Prior beliefs, new evidence, updated beliefs, something like that.
Exactly that. Our brains combine these prior beliefs, basically, everything we've learned from past experiences, patterns we've noticed, our expectations about how things work. They combine those priors with the new evidence constantly streaming in from our senses. And from that dynamic mix, they form revised posterior beliefs. This is how we continuously update our understanding of the world. Researchers like Nil and Pouget, way back in 2004, did groundbreaking work showing how the brain optimally combines this sensory info with prior knowledge. It was huge because it suggested this wasn't just a metaphor. Our neurons are literally performing these sophisticated calculations, adjusting probability. It's like this dynamic statistical model running in your head moment by moment, tweaking the odds on countless tiny hypotheses without you needing to consciously crunch a single number.
That's actually incredible. So our brains are doing this complex Bayesian stuff, probability updates, without us even realizing it. Can you give us a really concrete, everyday example? Because it still feels a bit abstract. How does this prediction error thing actually play out?
Absolutely. Let's say you're at a noisy party, lots of conversations, music buzzing around you, your brain's working hard, predicting the auditory input, trying to filter out the background noise so you can focus on the person you're talking to. Then suddenly, from across the room, you hear your name.
Yeah, that always gets my attention, even in a loud place.
Right, because your name wasn't what your brain was actively predicting or prioritizing in that soundscape. Hearing it creates a prediction error, a little jolt of surprise. That error signal instantly grabs your attention, you turn your head, your brain quickly updates its model. Okay, my name is relevant here, need to reevaluate the auditory landscape. Shift focus. It rapidly reweights the probability that important info might be coming from that direction.
Okay, that makes sense. The unexpected sound triggers an update.
Here's another one. Think about walking into your kitchen every morning. Your brain has a very strong prior belief about what it should look like. The counters, the coffee machine, maybe the smell of coffee.
Yeah, totally automatic. Don't even think about it.
Exactly. But one day, you step in, and bam, there's a broken glass shattered all over the floor.
Whoa, okay, yeah. That would definitely stop me in my tracks.
Right, because that's a stark deviation from your prediction, a genuine surprise. Your brain immediately flags this prediction error, updates its model, shifts your attention from your usual morning routine to this unexpected danger. It revises its expectations for the kitchen environment right then and there. And this constant unconscious adjustment of probabilities, is that a snake or just a stick? Was that tone sarcastic or genuine? It happens continuously. Your neurons are constantly fiddling with the odds on thousands of micro-hypotheses, shaping how you perceive reality without any conscious effort.
That's truly fascinating. Our brains are these amazing probabilistic machines under the hood, always trying to minimize surprise. But here's the paradox again, the one I always get stuck on, and I bet many listening do too. If our brains are naturally Bayesian, quietly crunching probabilities all the time, why aren't we all expert statisticians in daily life? Why do we struggle so much to consciously use probabilities for those big, important decisions, like Lena's job choice?
Right. And to understand that apparent paradox, that disconnect, we really need to turn to Daniel Kahneman's Nobel Prize-winning work, especially his hugely influential book from 2011, Thinking Fast and Slow. Are you familiar with it?
Absolutely. System 1 and System 2, right? It really changed how I thought about thinking.
Exactly. Kahneman distinguishes between these two distinct modes or systems of thought, and they function quite differently from that deep implicit Bayesian machinery we were just talking about. So System 1, that's your brain's autopilot. It's lightning fast, totally automatic, intuitive, and requires basically zero conscious effort. It handles things like instant reactions, gut feelings, using those quick mental shortcuts, heuristics to make snap judgments all day long. You see a scary face. System 1 instantly says, be wary. It's incredibly efficient for routine stuff. Lets us navigate the world without analyzing every little thing. Recognizing a friend, understanding a simple sentence. That's all System 1, speed and efficiency.
Okay, so System 1 is the fast, intuitive autopilot. Handles the routine stuff. Then System 2 must be the conscious pilot. The one who takes over when things get complicated or need real thought.
Precisely. System 2 is the opposite. It's slow, analytical, deliberate, and really effortful. It's what you engage when you're doing something complex, solving a tough math problem, meticulously planning a big project, carefully weighing the pros and cons of those 2 job offers, like Lena's trying to do. It's the pilot who intervenes when there's turbulence, or when the autopilot encounters something unfamiliar or dangerous that needs deep thought and logical reasoning.
Okay, makes sense. But Kahneman also says System 2 is lazy, right?
That's the crucial point. System 2, as Kahneman details brilliantly, is inherently lazy. It has limited capacity, limited bandwidth, you could say, and by default, it prefers to operate in low effort mode. It often just accepts System 1's suggestions with minimal checking, which is fine for a lot of everyday life. You don't want to deeply analyze which brand of toothpaste to buy every morning.
Right, that would be exhausting.
But, and this is critical, it means System 2 often fails to properly engage when it really should, especially in complex, high-stakes situations where just relying on gut feelings or those System 1 shortcuts can lead to pretty big errors. System 2 is perfectly capable of that normative, logical, probabilistic reasoning, but it's often just content to let System 1 run the show. It conserves energy.
And this laziness leaves the door wide open for System 1's biases, doesn't it? Those mental shortcuts that seem helpful but can actually lead us way off track.
Exactly. System 1 has this whole toolkit of biases and blind spots. It uses heuristics, those mental shortcuts, which are great for speed, but, as Tversky and Kahneman showed in their classic 1974 work, can lead to systematic predictable errors. Take the availability heuristic, for example. If you've recently seen vivid news stories about lottery winners, System 1 makes winning seem much more likely than it is. It's easily available in your memory, so you might overestimate your chances, buy a ticket, completely ignoring the actual astronomical odds.
Guilty as charged. The jackpot gets huge, I see the ad, suddenly it feels possible.
We all do it. Or, think back to Lena. She might assess the startup's chances based mostly on the founder's charisma, right? That vivid personal impression is very available. She might totally overlook the dismal base rates of startup survival because that charismatic image is stronger in her mind. System 2 could step in, seek out objective data, do the harder thinking. But often, it just doesn't. It accepts System 1's quick, intuitive answer. And this ties right into Herbert Simon's concept from way back in 1957, bounded rationality.
Bounded rationality, meaning our ability to be rational is limited.
Exactly. Simon argued our rationality isn't perfect or infinite. It's inherently bounded, limited by our cognitive resources, attention, memory, time. We simply can't optimize every single decision perfectly. So instead, we prioritize. And System 2, it really only fully engages when something forces it to. A big surprise, a glaring contradiction, a really difficult dilemma. Something that shocks the autopilot and makes the conscious pilot grab the controls.
So, what does all this mean for you listening? And for Lena, facing her big choice? It means that while your brain, deep down, is this sophisticated subconscious prediction machine, your conscious thinking, your default mode, is often only selectively probabilistic. You have the capacity for that clear, logical, probability-based reasoning that's System 2. But your default mode is intuitive, fast, driven by that efficient but error-prone System 1. And this fundamental conflict, this tension between our underlying Bayesian brain and our lazy System 2, that explains why you might perfectly understand what probability is, but still find yourself ignoring it in those critical personal decisions. This inherent struggle really sets the stage for why living probabilistically feels so incredibly difficult for us, even when the stakes are really, really high. Okay, so we've got these amazing prediction engines in our heads, but our conscious mind, System 2, is often lazy, and our quick draw System 1 is full of biases. Now let's really dig into why. Why does actually living probabilistically applying odds and percentages to our messy everyday lives feel almost impossible for most of us, most of the time? Just imagine for a second. Try to consciously calculate the probabilities for every single decision you make, even the tiny ones. Should I take an umbrella? What's the exact chance of rain? What's the precise utility cost of getting wet versus the minor hassle of carrying it? You'd be completely paralyzed. Drowned in calculations before you even got out the door. Gary Klein talked about this back in '98, the paralysis of analysis. The sheer cognitive load would just be unbearable.
Absolutely, it would be utterly overwhelming, and that cognitive load in modern life is just immense anyway. System 2, our deliberate, analytical mind, it's like a premium resource. It uses a lot of mental fuel. Now think about the really big decisions. Buying a house, Lena's career choice. These involve not just like economic forecasts, but deeply personal preferences, family needs, future unknowns, like interest rates changing. It's loaded with staggering uncertainty.
Yeah, it's not just one variable, it's dozens, all tangled up.
Exactly. To truly mathematically optimize a decision like that would require computational power and access to data way beyond what any single individual has. So what do people do instead? They simplify massively. They rely on, I just feel this neighborhood is up and coming, or I have a good feeling about this house, or that gut instinct about the startup founder's charm.
Right, we fall back on feelings, on narrative.
And crucially, unlike in a lab where you can run an experiment over and over, you rarely get to repeat a major personal decision. You don't get to buy that specific house 10 times to see how it works out on average. You don't get to take that startup job multiple times. So there's no easy way to refine your probability estimates. It makes calibrating your judgment incredibly difficult. There's often no clear, immediate feedback loop.
So we're overloaded, we simplify, and we don't get good feedback. That sounds like a recipe for, well, not living probabilistically.
It really is. And the consequence of this complexity and our limited cognitive firepower is that we often satisfice, as Herbert Simon described it back in 1957.
Satisfies, meaning we settle for good enough.
Exactly. We don't aim for the absolute optimal solution because that's too hard or takes too long. We use rules of thumb, heuristics, and we settle for an option that meets our basic criteria, something that's good enough. And ironically, this means we often cut the most corners, rely most heavily on System 1 precisely when the stakes are highest, because the mental effort needed to truly optimize those big decisions is just too daunting.
We default to the easier path, even when careful thought is most needed.
And this whole difficulty is massively amplified by our ingrained cognitive biases and heuristics. Those mental shortcuts we talked about, they often operate beneath conscious awareness, right at System 1's level, and they lead to these systematic, predictable errors. Let's look a bit closer at a few really common ones that trip us up constantly. Take overconfidence bias. This often shows up as the planning fallacy. A project manager might be, say, 90% certain their complex software project will finish on time, even though historical data from their own company shows that only 50% of similar projects actually do.
Oh, I see that all the time. This time it's different.
Exactly. Or think about yourself. How often do you underestimate how long a task will take? Oh, I can knock out that report in an hour, and 3 hours later, you're still typing.
Definitely guilty. My 1-hour estimates are notoriously optimistic. It's almost like my brain tricks me into starting.
It feels universal, right? Because System 1 just prefers a simple, positive story. This will be easy. Then there's the availability heuristic. We touched on this. After you hear a really vivid, dramatic news report about, say, an airplane crash, you might suddenly feel much more anxious about flying. You overestimate the risk, even though statistics consistently show flying is incredibly safe compared to, say, driving your car.
Right, because the image of the crash is so readily available in my mind, it feels more frequent than it is.
Precisely. Your brain uses what's easily recalled as a proxy for how likely something is. It leads to really skewed risk assessments. And another big one, loss aversion. Tversky and Kahneman highlighted this. It's a cornerstone of prospect theory. Basically, the psychological pain of losing something, say $10, feels significantly worse, maybe twice as bad, as the pleasure of gaining the same $10.
So losses loom larger than gains.
Much larger. This means we're often way too risk-averse when it comes to potential downsides. We might miss out on beneficial opportunities because we're too focused on the small chance of loss. Or we might cling to bad investments just to avoid feeling the sting of realizing a loss.
And the really sneaky part, like you said, is that even if you know about these biases, maybe you've read Kahneman, you understand the availability heuristic. Correcting them in the heat of the moment when you're actually making the decision, that requires serious System 2 effort. It's like trying to steer against a strong current.
It really is. Recognizing the bias in retrospect is one thing. overriding it in real time when your intuition is pulling you strongly. That's incredibly hard. System 1 is powerful. And then it gets even more complex, more human, when we factor in emotions and motivated reasoning. Decisions aren't just dry calculations, are they? They're loaded with feelings, personal values, social pressures. Often, we don't want to think in cold probabilities about things we deeply care about. The emotional truth can be too painful.
Yeah, like health decisions
Well-
or relationship decisions.
Exactly. Think about a patient with a really serious diagnosis. They might cling desperately to that one anecdotal success story they heard, ignoring the bleak survival statistics their doctor provides. Why? To maintain hope. That's motivated reasoning, our desires, shaping how we interpret the evidence. Or someone deeply in love, maybe like Nina in our later case study. They might dismiss clear red flags in a relationship, telling themselves ours will be different, we'll beat the odds. Because the alternative, confronting a painful truth about incompatibility, is just too emotionally difficult to face right now.
So our emotions can hijack our probability assessments.
They absolutely can. Intense fear can make us exaggerate tiny risks, like an irrational fear of sharks keeping someone out of the ocean, even though the odds are minuscule compared to driving to the beach. And conversely, powerful optimism or desire can blind us to very real dangers. A gambler thinking a win is due after losing streaks. An entrepreneur ignoring clear market warnings because they're so invested in their vision. In all these cases, the story we tell ourselves, the emotional context you use to interpret the probabilities, that's often way more powerful than the objective numbers themselves. Trying to live purely probabilistically can feel unnatural, almost inhuman, because we are feeling beings first and foremost, not just calculating machines.
And it's not just the big emotional decisions that trip us up, just the sheer volume of choices we make every single day. That must take a toll, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about an average day. Researchers like Baumeister and Tierney, in their work on willpower back in 2011, estimated adults make tens of thousands of small decisions. Most are trivial: what to wear, what to eat for lunch, which email to answer first. But the cumulative effect is huge. We can't possibly spend significant System 2 energy on each one. So by the time you get to the really big consequential decisions later in the day, your mental energy reserves might be seriously depleted.
Decision fatigue, I've definitely felt that.
Exactly. Decision fatigue sets in. And when it does, your brain defaults to the path of least resistance, those efficient but often flawed System 1 shortcuts. There's striking empirical evidence for this. A really famous study by Danziger and colleagues in 2011 looked at parole judges in Israel. They found a fascinating pattern. Judges were significantly more likely to grant parole early in the day or right after a food break when their mental energy was replenished.
Seriously, so the time of day affected parole decisions.
Significantly. As the day wore on, as decision fatigue accumulated, they increasingly defaulted to the safer, less mentally demanding option: denying parole. It wasn't necessarily about the merits of the cases changing, it was about the judge's depleted cognitive resources.
No, that's kind of alarming, actually. It means after a long day at work, you are far less likely to meticulously weigh pros and cons for a big evening decision, a major purchase, a family discussion. You're much more likely to just go with your gut or pick the easiest option, whatever that is. Puts those late-night online shopping sprees in a new light.
Doesn't it just? And finally, even if you, as an individual, make a heroic effort to think probabilistically, society itself often doesn't make it easy. There are real social and practical barriers. Think about communication. For years, doctors really struggled to convey risk effectively. Just saying a 1 in 1,000 chance versus 0.1%, or using qualitative terms like very unlikely, can lead to vastly different interpretations and feelings in patients, as researchers like Jajurenzer pointed out back in 2007. Weather forecasts used to be deliberately vague, avoiding clear percentages, partly because the public wasn't used to thinking that way.
And there's pressure to sound certain, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're in charge.
Huge pressure. Leaders, experts, they often feel they have to sound absolutely confident. Saying I'm 70% confident can be seen as weakness or indecisiveness, even if it's the most honest and accurate assessment. We crave certainty, even when it's just an illusion. Outside of specific fields like insurance or professional gambling, just talking in odds feels weird, uncommon. It's not part of our normal conversation.
all these challenges stack up. It explains why so often you might look back and think, if only I'd thought that through more carefully. Or, our system too could have handled it, probably.
Yeah.
But it wasn't properly engaged, or it lacked the right tools, the right information presented in the right way. So the massive question becomes, how can we tip the scales? How can we help System 2 show up when it counts? How can you get the efficiency of intuition and the accuracy of probabilistic reasoning? And this leads us directly to this really exciting, maybe even revolutionary idea. AI is a genuine cognitive partner.
Right. What we're talking about here is the concept of System 2 at scale. It's about moving way beyond simple AI assistants that just fetch information. It's about actively amplifying your reflective, analytical thinking, your System 2, with the help of sophisticated AI. And let's be really clear, this is emphatically not about AI replacing your judgment. It's about assisting you. A deep collaboration. Think of the AI acting as an augmented System 2, or maybe like a cognitive exoskeleton.
A cognitive exoskeleton. I like that. So it doesn't do the walking for you, but it makes walking easier. Helps you carry more.
Exactly. It helps you carry the heavy cognitive load. It can offload the immense computational burden of dealing with complex probabilities and uncertainties. And crucially, it can gently, strategically nudge you away from those ingrained biases we just discussed. All while, and this is key, deeply respective your unique intuitive style, your emotional needs, your values. The real potential here isn't just that AI can crunch numbers faster, it's that it could subtly, constructively influence and maybe even help retrain your intuition over time, making you a better, more calibrated decision maker yourself, even when the AI isn't actively involved.
Okay, so the goal isn't to turn us into robots calculating odds all day. It's about empowering us. Leveraging AI where we humans are naturally stretched thin, making it actually practical to live a bit more like a Bayesian when it truly matters. But how do you actually design an AI to do that without it being overwhelming or annoying or making us feel like it's taking over?
That's the critical design challenge. And it brings us to our first core principle: selective engagement on demand System 2. The AI has to be smart about when it intervenes. It should only step in where it matters most, carefully avoiding trivial, everyday decisions.
Right. I don't need AI help choosing socks.
Exactly. The focus should be on genuinely high-impact, high-uncertainty domains, critical health decisions, complex financial planning, pivotal career moves, major personal choices with long-lasting consequences. These are the areas where misjudging probabilities can really hurt your future well-being. How does it get activated? Well, maybe you explicitly invoke it. You say, hey, Aiden, I need help thinking this through, or Cogni, let's unpack this dilemma. But importantly, it could also potentially proactively recognize consequential context. Maybe it sees keywords in your calendar entries, performance review, treatment options, loan application, or detects certain patterns in emails or documents you're working on.
So it could anticipate when you might need that extra cognitive boost.
Potentially, yes, with careful privacy controls, of course. This intelligent, selective approach filters out the daily noise. It conserves your precious mental energy. And it ensures the AI is seen as a valuable, supportive partner, not a constant nagging presence. It's there right when your System 2 needs backup, not when System 1 is doing just fine.
Okay, so it's a wise, silent partner, available on demand, not bothering you constantly. That sounds much better. But just knowing a probability number, like 20% chance, often isn't very helpful on its own, is it? The framing, the context. That seems crucial for us humans.
Absolutely crucial. Which leads straight to design principle 2. Probabilities with context, not just numbers. If the AI just spits out 20% chance of outcome X, many people won't know what to do with that. How does that feel? Should I worry? Is that high or low? Can I trust it? So the AI needs to act more like a Socratic guide or a trusted coach. It has to present probabilistic information in a rich, meaningful, narrative form. Instead of just the cold statistic, the AI might ask something like, okay, the data suggests roughly a 20% chance of complication with this surgery. Let's explore that. What would it actually feel like for you if you were in that 20%? What specific steps could we consider right now to maybe mitigate that risk or just prepare for it emotionally and practically?
So it turns the number into a scenario you can actually engage with.
Exactly, it makes it concrete. This approach is really inspired by platforms like Profit Arena. They don't just ask AI models for a number forecast, they demand detailed rationales. The AI has to explain its reasoning, show the supporting evidence.
Show its work, basically, like in math class.
Precisely. And that showing its work is vital for building transparency and trust. It lets you understand the basis of the advice. Research by McCabe and Castell back in 2008 showed something similar. When people get explanations alongside data, the statistics become more concrete, more personally relevant, and crucially, it invites you into a dialogue. Rather than just passively receiving a number, it becomes a real conversation, not a command from an algorithm.
That makes total sense. We connect with stories, with reasons, not just raw data points. But where does the AI get these probabilities from in the first place? Especially for complex future events. It can't just pluck them out of thin air.
Great question, and that's where design principle 3, harnessing collective intelligence, comes in. This is incredibly powerful. The AI doesn't operate in isolation. It's designed to tap into vast external knowledge bases and, importantly, the wisdom of crowds. Think about platforms like Metaculus. They aggregate predictions from thousands of informed people, experts, researchers, knowledgeable citizens on a huge range of future events. And the resulting probabilities are often remarkably well calibrated, frequently outperforming individual experts.
So it leverages the combined knowledge of many smart people.
Exactly. And then you have prediction markets like Polymarket or Kalshi, which Ferris and Ferris wrote about recently. These platforms create odds based on real people betting real money on future outcomes, economic indicators, election results, tech breakthroughs. The financial incentive tends to produce incredibly sharp, dynamically updated probabilities. It filters out noise and wishful thinking because people have skin in the game. Cass Sunstein wrote about this power in his book, Infotopia. So our AI assistant could seamlessly pull in this relevant external data, maybe the collective forecast for a recession next year, or the odds of remote work persisting in your industry, and use that to inform your personal decision about, say, changing jobs or buying a house.
Wow. So it connects macro probabilities to my micro situation.
And the beauty is, it's dynamic. The AI can constantly update its advice as new information flows into these platforms, like real-time market adjustments. This helps you avoid getting stuck on old information anchoring bias and ensures your decisions are based on the most current, collectively informed reality.
Okay, so you get access to this huge pool of collective knowledge you couldn't possibly gather yourself. It's like having the world's best forecasters whispering in your ear. But what about our internal biases, those System 1 quirks? Can the AI really help us counteract our own flawed thinking?
Yes, and this is where design principle 4, Socratic nudging and bias correction, becomes really interesting and maybe a little provocative. The AI acts as a gentle, intelligent check on your intuitive biases. Not by telling you you're wrong, but by asking smart, well-timed, sometimes challenging questions. For instance, if you sound overly confident about something, maybe like David, our case study later, feeling sure his startup will succeed, the AI might gently intervene. Okay, you sound maybe 90% sure this venture will work out, that's great confidence. But just as a thought experiment, would you be willing to bet a significant chunk of your savings on exactly that probability? Research shows we often feel more confident than the objective data suggests. Maybe we could quickly look at some evidence from similar ventures just to double-check those assumptions.
Ooh, that's a clever nudge. Using the betting analogy to force a reality check.
Right. Or it might subtly remind you of crucial base rates, those underlying probabilities that System 1 loves to ignore. Like, just keeping in mind, the historical average shows about 60% of new small businesses fail within 3 years, even with great ideas. How is your specific plan designed to beat that average? Let's make sure we've really accounted for that. Or it could encourage you to actively consider counterfactuals, the roads not taken. You're clearly focused on the best case scenario, which is important. But what could happen in the less likely but still plausible negative scenario you seem to be dismissing? How would you actually cope, practically and emotionally, if that happened? What safety nets could we put in place right now?
So playing devil's advocate, basically, making you think about the downsides.
Exactly. These Socratic nudges are designed to combat things like confirmation bias, where we only look for evidence that confirms what we already believe, and scenario neglect, where we only imagine the outcome we want. These are techniques used by super forecasters. Those people Phil Tetlock and Dan Gardner identified in their research who consistently make incredibly accurate predictions. They do it partly by constantly questioning their own assumptions and actively seeking out reasons why they might be wrong. Your AI partner becomes your personal, unbiased devil's advocate, ensuring you've really stress-tested your thinking before you commit.
This sounds incredibly powerful. It's not just giving information, it's almost teaching you how to think more rigorously. But There's a really fine line here, isn't there? Between helpful guidance and feeling like the AI is making the decision for you. How do we ensure it doesn't undermine our own agency, our intuition, our final say?
That is an absolutely critical point, and it leads directly to design principle 5, preserving autonomy and intuition. This is non-negotiable. The AI must never remove the human from the loop. It's designed as a collaborative partnership, never paternalism. The final decision must always, unequivocally, rest with you. How do we ensure this? Well, the AI is programmed to use tentative, suggestive language. Perhaps consider this. What if we explored? Have you thought about never imperatives like do this or you must choose that? We also have to explicitly acknowledge the limits of quantification. Not everything that matters can be captured in numbers. Deeply personal values, your unique appetite for risk, the subjective meaning you attach to different outcomes, your ethical compass, these are fundamentally individual. They can't and shouldn't be decided by an algorithm.
So the AI learns my preferences, but doesn't dictate my values.
Exactly. The AI learns your subjective preferences over time. For example, it might learn you're financially conservative but a risk taker in your career adventures, and it tailors its advice accordingly, integrating those qualitative aspects. This really aligns with the concept of the extended mind, which philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers proposed back in 1998, and others like Risco and Gilbert have explored regarding cognitive offloading. The idea is that our tools, whether a simple notebook or a sophisticated AI, can become integrated parts of our cognitive process. They extend and enhance our reasoning abilities without diminishing our core intellect.
So the AI becomes part of how I think, an extension of my mind.
Precisely. The AI isn't there to replace or diminish your intuition, but to inform it, refine it, calibrate it. And ideally, over time, through interacting with it, you might even internalize some of its Socratic methods, its way of weighing evidence. You might become a more calibrated, probabilistically savvy thinker yourself, even when the AI isn't around. It's about growing your own wisdom.
Okay, these design principles sound brilliant in theory. Selective engagement, context, collective intelligence, nudging, preserving autonomy. But if the AI isn't easy or pleasant to use, or if people just don't trust it, none of this matters in the real world, right? How crucial is the actual user experience?
Oh, it's monumentally important, absolutely fundamental. This brings us to design principle 6, user experience, interface, and trust. The practical design of the interface, the sheer naturalness of the interaction that's make or break for adoption, whether it ends up being a seamless voice assistant integrated into your home, a chat app on your phone, maybe even an augmented reality overlay giving you contextual info, it has to be intuitive, accessible at the right moment, and not intrusive. The tone is also critical. It needs to feel collaborative, empathetic, like talking to a really knowledgeable, supportive friend or a wise mentor, not a cold robotic calculator or some judgmental expert talking down to you.
Yeah, the tone makes all the difference. It needs to feel like it's on my side.
Absolutely. And building profound, deep trust is paramount. The AI has to consistently demonstrate both competence and benevolent intent. How? By providing accurate, carefully sourced information, by transparently citing its underlying models or the collective intelligence platforms it's drawing from, by consistently acting demonstrably in your best interest, respecting your privacy and personal goals above everything else. It should also be designed to admit its own uncertainties. Look, I'm only 80% confident here, the data is a bit thin. And crucially, it needs to learn from your feedback, show that it's adapting and growing based on your interactions. The whole ethos should be that of a supportive, wise counselor, equipped with powerful data and computation, yes, but also imbued with a deep understanding of human psychology and maybe even a touch of emotional intelligence. Without that trust, it's just another piece of software nobody uses. With trust, it becomes an invaluable extension of your own mind.
Okay, so weaving all 6 of these principles together, selective engagement, context, collective intelligence, nudging, autonomy, and trust, we can really start to envision an AI that functions as a true cognitive partner, like having your own personal statistician, world-class forecaster, and a wise coach, all rolled into one, quietly on standby, ready to make your system 2 stronger and more engaged whenever you need it most. Now, let's bring these abstract principles down to earth. Let's explore how this might actually look and feel in your real life through some compelling case studies. All right, let's dive into our first case study. Meet Maria. She's 45, and she's dealing with this chronic knee condition that's really messing with her active lifestyle. She loves hiking, playing tennis, but the knee is holding her back. Her orthopedic surgeon lays out two main options. One, continue with physical therapy, maybe more intensive than before. Two, consider a new, minimally invasive surgical procedure. The surgery sounds promising, high chance of significant improvement. But there's a catch. About a 5% risk of serious complications. And importantly, no absolute guarantee it will work perfectly. So Maria is completely torn, right? Oscillating between that desperate desire to get her active life back and this very real gut-level fear of the surgery's risks. How would her AI partner, let's call her Aiden, help Maria navigate this really personal, complex decision?
Okay, so Aiden would start by intelligently gathering and synthesizing highly personalized data for Maria. It would pull success rates, complication rates from the latest clinical studies on this specific procedure. It would look at aggregated patient outcomes from large anonymized health databases, maybe even pull in expert forecasts on long-term effectiveness or newer rehab protocols. But crucially, Aiden wouldn't just look at the medical data. It would integrate what it knows about Maria's personal values, her passion for an active life, her general willingness to take calculated risks for big potential gains, maybe her specific fears or risk aversion around health issues. Then Aiden wouldn't just dump raw numbers on her. Remember principle 2. Context matters. It needs to frame them in a way her intuitive system 1 can grasp. So Aiden might say something like, okay, Maria, based on the latest large studies, about 60% of patients similar to you experience significant improvement in mobility and pain after this procedure. That's the main upside we're aiming for. However, we do need to seriously consider the downside risks. There's roughly a 5% chance that's 1 in 20 people of experiencing a serious complication, like a deep infection or nerve damage. This could mean a longer recovery, maybe even needing another procedure. And then there's this middle ground. About 35% of people find the surgery is safe, but it doesn't give them the major improvement they hoped for. They end up feeling not much different than before. So, to make that 5% risk more concrete, imagine 100 people just like you having the surgery. Around 60 would likely feel much better, more active. About 35 would see little change or only minor improvement. And unfortunately, about 5 would experience one of those serious complications, meaning a tougher recovery journey. How does hearing it framed like that, thinking about those 5 actual people out of 100, how does that resonate with you?
Wow, that 100 people analogy. Kahneman talked about that, right? How it makes abstract percentages much more tangible for System 1. Suddenly, 5% isn't just a number, it's 5 individuals. That feels much more real.
Exactly, it grounds the probability. But what happens when Maria inevitably focuses on that fear? What if I'm one of those 5? That's where Aiden employs the Socratic nudging and empathetic framing. It wouldn't dismiss her fear, Aiden might say. It's completely natural and wise to focus on that possibility, Maria. Let's really examine it. What specific complication worries you the most? If that happened, what would it actually mean for your daily life, your family, your work? While many complications are treatable, it would undeniably be a difficult period. It might mean months of extra rehab, maybe another surgery. How do you truly feel about preparing for that possibility, acknowledging that difficulty, even if the chance is relatively small?
So it validates the fear, but encourages her to explore it realistically.
Right, and then it gently balances the perspective. Aiden, we also need to consider the other side, that roughly 40% chance the surgery doesn't really help much, or only helps a little. How would you feel if you went through it all and didn't get the big improvement you're hoping for? This prevents her from fixating only on the absolute best or absolute worst outcomes. Aiden could also tap into collaborative intelligence, maybe by analyzing anonymized posts from patient forums or support groups related to this specific surgery. Aiden. Looking at anonymized experiences, a common theme isn't just the rare complications, but many people found they significantly underestimated the duration and intensity of the post-surgery rehabilitation, or the chronic pain that sometimes lingered. Have you fully considered the commitment needed for potentially 6 to 9 months of dedicated rehab and how that fits into your life right now?
Oh, that's smart. Focusing on the practical realities of recovery, which might be more likely than a rare complication. Setting realistic expectations.
Exactly. And finally, Aiden might use regret-based reframing, drawing on that research by Gilovich and Medvec from 1995, which found people often regret inaction more than action in the long run. Maria, try to picture yourself 5 years from now. Which scenario do you think might cause you more regret? Taking this calculated risk with the surgery, even if there are bumps in the road, knowing you did everything you could to regain your active life? or avoiding the surgery due to the risks and finding your condition continues to limit you significantly for years, always wondering, what if I'd just tried it?
That's a powerful prompt. It forces her to connect the decision to her long-term values and potential future self.
It helps align the choice with what matters most deeply. So Maria, having explored all these angles, the data, the risks contextualized, the recovery realities, her own values and potential regrets, feels much clearer, more grounded. She decides to proceed with the surgery. And Aident doesn't stop there. It then helps her proactively plan her rehab schedule, set realistic milestones, maybe even monitor her progress, continuing as that supportive partner through the recovery journey.
That's a fantastic illustration. It's dead and informed, but deeply human-centered. Okay, case study 2. David's career crossroads. David's a talented software engineer. He's weighing a very comfortable, stable job offer from a big, established tech company against a thrilling but definitely risky offer from a startup. High potential upside at the startup financially, learning opportunities, but also a significant chance it could just fail. Classic Lena's dilemma, right? How would Cogni, his AI assistant, help him cut through the hype and the fear here?
Okay, so Cogni, David's AI partner, would immediately start by grounding him in some base rates, bringing in that external perspective. Cogni. David, let's look at the big picture first. Statistically, something like 1 in 3 startups make it past the 5-year mark, and maybe only 1 in 10 become truly significant successes or have a major acquisition. Ferris and Ferris noted figures like these recently. Quote. Now, based on what we know specifically about this startup, their current funding situation, the experience of their leadership team, the specific market they're in, my analysis suggests roughly a 30% chance it's genuinely thriving in 5 years. Maybe a 50% chance it kind of struggles along, maybe gets acquired for a modest amount, and about a 20% chance it fails completely within the next 2 years, perhaps runs out of cash. How do those percentages land with you compared to your initial gut feeling?
Oof. That 20% failure rate might feel pretty stark when you're excited about the idea.
It might, but Cogni immediately helps him explore the consequences of that failure, turning the abstract risk into something more concrete he can plan for. Cogni. Okay, let's game out that worst-case 20% scenario. If the startup failed, you'd be back job hunting. Given your skills and network, which are strong, I estimate you'd likely find a comparable new position within, say, 2 to 4 months. Quote, you currently have enough savings to cover about 6 months of expenses without any income. So financially, even if the worst happened, you'd likely be okay, though obviously it would be stressful. What other specific safeguards could we put in place now to minimize that stress if things did go south?
So it quantifies the risk, but also quantifies the safety net.
Yep.
Makes the failure scenario less terrifyingly vague.
Exactly, it makes it manageable. Cogni would also thoroughly discuss the potential upside, not just the potential equity payout, but also those intangible benefits. David clearly values the chance for accelerated learning, building something new, having a bigger impact. It weighs both sides explicitly.
And would have pulled in that collective intelligence too, like market forecasts.
Absolutely. Cogni connects David's personal dilemma to broader trends and relatable examples. Cogni. Interesting data point here, I found a relevant question on Metaculus asking about the probability of a major technological breakthrough in this startup's specific sector within the next 3 years. The collective forecast from hundreds of informed people puts it at around 40%. A breakthrough like that could significantly boost this company's chances. Also, let's consider a reference case. Remember your friend Alex? He went through a startup failure about 3 years ago, right? But he leveraged that experience, learned a ton, and is now thriving in a senior role at a really successful growth stage company. His journey might offer some valuable lessons for navigating potential setbacks, couldn't it?
Using both quantitative forecasts and relatable human stories. That's smart.
It makes the abstract less intimidating. But then, Cogni performs that crucial bias check. Gently, but firmly. Cogni. David, I can hear the enthusiasm in your voice about the startup's vision, and that's fantastic energy. But let's pause for a second. Are we maybe slightly overweighting the positives due to that excitement? Could there be a touch of optimism bias creeping in? Remember those base rates many startups, even ones with brilliant ideas and teams, just don't make it. Are you truly mentally and emotionally prepared for the possibility that a year from now the product hasn't found traction or the next funding round falls through? Let's just be sure we've stress tested that.
That gentle nudge to confront the less rosy possibilities keeps him grounded.
Right. So David, having thoroughly explored the risks, quantified the potential downsides, built a contingency plan, and had his enthusiasm checked against base rates and potential biases. He feels much more confident. He decides to take the startup offer, and Cognia helps him plan practical safeguards, maybe setting up an aggressive savings plan, proactively updating his resume and LinkedIn profile, continuing to network in his field. He makes a bold choice, but it's an informed one, aligned with his values, not just driven by hype.
Another great example of empowered decision-making. Okay, one more. Nina's personal life and relationships. This one feels even trickier. Nina's deeply in love in a long-distance relationship with her partner, Sam. She's seriously considering a huge life change, moving to Sam City. This means quitting her stable job, leaving her close friends and family, her whole support network, and basically starting her life over from scratch in a new place. This is the ultimate heart versus head dilemma, right? Loaded with emotional risk, deeply personal stakes. How could Sage, her AI assistant, possibly help here without feeling intrusive or cold?
This requires the utmost sensitivity from Sage. It needs to acknowledge the profound emotional weight right from the start. Sage, Nina, this is clearly a massive decision, touching on the things that matter most to you: love, security, connection. Let's unpack it carefully together. First, the relationship itself. Looking at aggregated data, and please know this is just statistical, not predictive of your unique relationship, couples who move from long distance to living together show about a 70% success rate in staying together happily through the first year. However, it's also true that roughly 30% experience significant struggles or even decide to separate during that initial adjustment period. How does hearing that 70-30 split feel to you? Does it align generally with what your heart is telling you about your connection with Sam?
Presenting the statistics gently, acknowledging their limits, that 30% rough patch number might still be unsettling though.
It might be. And Sage would help Nina confront that what if directly, again, perhaps using regret framing. Sage, it's natural to fear being in that 30%. If things unfortunately didn't work out after the move, how do you imagine you'd feel? Would you primarily regret making the leap for love and having it not succeed? Or thinking long term, might you regret not taking the chance on this relationship you clearly value so much and always wondering what if?
Again, connecting it to future regret helps clarify what's ultimately more important to her.
Right. Then Sage would shift to the practical anxieties, offering concrete analysis and solutions to make the unknowns feel less daunting. Sage, let's talk about your career concerns. I've analyzed the job market in Sam City for roles similar to yours in marketing. The unemployment rate in that sector is currently quite low. Based on your skills and experience level, my projection is you could likely find a comparable job there within 2 to 3 months. You also have savings that would comfortably cover about 4 months of living expenses in that city. What if we also proactively started job searching before you even move? We could aim to line up some remote interviews now, potentially shortening or even eliminating any employment gap. How does having a concrete job search plan like that make you feel about the career risk?
That's brilliant. Turning a vague fear, I won't find a job, into a specific manageable project with a timeline and contingency plan reduces the anxiety.
Exactly. And the social ties leaving friends and family, that's huge and often underestimated, as you said. Sage needs to address that head on with empathy. Sage, leaving your incredibly strong support network here is a significant emotional cost, Nina. We need to acknowledge that fully. If you do decide to move, let's work together right now to create a tangible plan for building a new community in Sam City. Maybe research some hobby groups, volunteer opportunities, professional networks there. Quote, we can also map out a realistic plan for staying connected with everyone here, schedule regular visits, budget for travel. I can even simulate the costs and frequency to help you visualize how you'd maintain those important bonds. How does knowing you'd have a proactive plan for both building new connections and maintaining old ones impact how you feel about the move?
Addressing the emotional cost directly, but offering practical strategies.
Yes. And crucially, Sage must also acknowledge that love and relationships involve inherent risk and that numbers aren't the whole story. It would link the decision back to Nina's own emotional resilience, her capacity for adaptation, her core values around partnership, adventure, and what she truly wants from her life. So Nina, having had her fears heard and validated, her risks quantified and paired with mitigation strategies, her practical concerns addressed with concrete plans, and the decision connected back to her core values, she decides to make the move. She feels more grounded, prepared, and excited. Sage then helps her build a comprehensive pre-move checklist, including those job search steps, community building ideas, and contingency plans supporting her through the transition.
These cases, Maria's health, David's career, Nina's relationship, they really paint a powerful picture. The AI isn't making the choice. It's acting as this incredible cognitive partner, providing data, context, credit questions, bias checks, contingency planning, always connecting back to the person's values.
Exactly. It wasn't just a calculator, it was a catalyst for deeper, more structured system 2 reasoning, but always with a profound understanding of the human heart at the center of the decision.
Okay, these case studies really show the potential, the profound impact AI could have as a cognitive partner, genuinely elevating our decision making. But with any tool this powerful, especially when getting so close to our personal lives, there are always critiques. Fears, really important considerations. Let's tackle some of the big ones head on. For instance, a really common worry. Will relying on AI like this just make us intellectually lazy? Maybe even erode our own critical thinking skills over time. You know, like how some people say GPS made us worse at navigating, or calculators weakened basic math abilities.
That's a very understandable fear, and it's one we absolutely have to address directly. It comes up all the time with new cognitive tools. The key distinction here, I think, lies in the design. The AI we're envisioning is explicitly designed as a partner, not a replacement for judgment. Think of it as enhancement or scaffolding for your thinking. Like a good teacher provides tools and frameworks to help students learn complex subjects that don't just do the work for them. And interestingly, research, like that compelling work by Mellers and colleagues back in 2014 on forecasting tournaments, consistently shows that when people work collaboratively with sophisticated analytical tools, it actually improves their own judgment and calibration over time. It doesn't necessarily erode it.
So interacting with the tool can actually make us better thinkers.
That's the potential, yes. The AI can handle the laborious computational heavy lifting, figuring out complex probabilities, synthesizing vast amounts of data. This frees up your limited mental energy. You can then focus on the more creative, strategic, empathetic aspects of the decision, the parts humans are uniquely good at, rather than getting bogged down in the statistical grunt work. This really fits with that extended mind theory we mentioned, Clark and Chalmers, Risco and Gilbert. The idea that our tools become integrated parts of our cognitive process. They extend our capabilities, enabling us to tackle problems we couldn't manage alone. You remain the driver, the ultimate decision maker. You monitor the AI autopilot, you learn from it, you override it when your intuition or values tell you something different. The AI is an extension of your thinking, not a substitute for it.
Okay, that's a helpful framing. But what about the other common concern? Isn't this approach just too cold, too detached? Life isn't just numbers and logic. What about human values, emotions, the messy narratives that shape our choices?
Another absolutely vital point, and again, the design principles we've discussed directly target this concern. This AI is explicitly designed to integrate objective numbers with your subjective human perspective. Your personal story, your complex emotions, your core values. It doesn't just present statistics, it engages you in a dialogue about what those statistics mean for you personally. Remember Maria, David, and Nina. The AI constantly considered their unique values, their risk appetite, their emotional responses. It's all about tethering the quantitative data to what truly matters to you, making the numerical perspective serve the personal, not the other way around. Intuition and probabilities are not treated as enemies here. They're carefully orchestrated allies. The AI illuminates possibilities and potential consequences, but it doesn't dictate your life choices or ignore your feelings.
But here's a really crucial one. What if the AI is wrong? Or worse, what if it's biased because of the data it was trained on? Blind trust in a flawed algorithm could be incredibly dangerous, right? Leading us confidently down the wrong path.
Absolutely paramount concern. Responsible AI design must place transparency, robustness, and humility at its core. Firstly, the AI has to be designed to communicate its own uncertainty. It shouldn't pretend to know everything. It might say, okay, based on the available data, I'm about 80% confident in these odds, but be aware there's a recognized lack of high-quality studies on situations exactly like yours, so the margin for error here is larger than usual.
So it needs to admit when it's not sure.
Exactly. Humility is key. Secondly, it needs to rigorously cite its sources. Just like Profit Arena demands rationales, the AI should make it clear where its information is coming from, which studies, which forecasting platforms, which data sets. So you can always verify it, check the underlying info, or even seek out additional human expertise. In fact, the AI should probably encourage second opinions from trusted humans, your doctor, your financial advisor, a wise mentor. And finally, yes, addressing potential bias is critical. Rigorous testing, ongoing evaluation, and proactive debiasing techniques applied to the algorithms and training data are absolutely essential. We need to constantly fight against replicating societal biases in the AI's recommendations. The goal here is informed trust. Trust built on transparency, verifiable evidence, and a clear understanding of the AI's limitations. Not blind faith. You remain the ultimate judge.
Makes sense. But even if it's well-designed, transparent, and unbiased, will people actually use it? We know people often ignore advice, especially probabilistic advice. Think about public health warnings or climate change forecasts. Getting people to act on probabilities is hard.
It's a real challenge to adoption, no doubt. Nudging behavior is notoriously difficult. However, the design approach we're emphasizing, deeply conversational, user-centric, personalized, dramatically increases the chances of engagement compared to generic warnings. Tailored advice, contextualized specifically for your life, your values, presented as a supportive dialogue that's exponentially more likely to be listened to and acted upon than a blanket public service announcement. Think about analogies like fitness trackers or personal finance apps. Those who actively choose to use them and engage with their personalized data often see significant benefits. They opt in because they see the value. Plus, younger generations are growing up with AI assistants as a completely normal part of their digital lives. They may be far more open to this kind of supportive cognitive partnership than previous generations. Remember, this isn't designed to be nagging or preachy. It's about empowerment, providing clarity, supporting your agency. When the value proposition is clear and the interaction feels natural and helpful, people tend to embrace tools that genuinely enhance their lives.
Okay, final concern. Analysis paralysis. Could having this super-powered analytical partner lead to us overanalyzing every little thing, getting completely bogged down in probabilistic what-ifs?
We definitely need to guard against that, and that's where the selective engagement principle is so crucial. The AI isn't meant for choosing your lunch. It's designed to step in primarily for those inherently complex, high-stakes decisions where you already feel conflicted or uncertain, where your System 1 intuition and your System 2 analysis are likely already wrestling with each other. And critically, the AI's role isn't to dump more information on you, it's to filter and structure information, to distill vast amounts of data into the most salient probabilities and scenarios, to help you focus on the key uncertainties and the most impactful potential outcomes. So ideally, it should actually streamline your thinking process for these tough decisions, rather than complicating it with endless detail. It's about improving decision quality and fostering clarity, not eliminating decisiveness or promoting perpetual rumination. It should help you get unstuck, not stuck deeper.
Okay, that clarifies the intention. So looking ahead, this vision of System 2 at scale feels incredibly promising. But what needs to happen next? What technical advances are still needed for this kind of AI cognitive partnership to really become widespread and effective?
Well, several things. AI calibration, ensuring its probability estimates are accurate and reflect true likelihoods, is still an active area of research. We mentioned forecast spend showing human experts can still outperform AI on some nuanced tasks. AI needs to get better at knowing what it doesn't know. It also needs to get much better at learning from your individual outcomes over time, continuously refining its understanding of your context and how different factors play out in your life. Privacy-preserving techniques are absolutely paramount. How do we allow the AI to access and learn from your sensitive personal data health records, financial details without compromising your privacy? Things like federated learning or advanced encryption will be critical. And explainable AI, XAI, needs to keep advancing. The AI needs to get even better at clearly articulating the why behind its suggestions, not just the what, so you can maintain that informed trust.
And beyond the tech, what are the broader implications if this becomes common?
Well, one fascinating potential outcome is the normalization of probabilistic thinking in everyday society. Imagine if millions of people started using AIs like this. Phrases like, okay, I'm about 80% sure I'll change jobs this year, or there's maybe a 30% chance this project hits a major delay, might become just normal ways of talking. This widespread adoption of probabilistic language could lead to dramatically better decision hygiene across the board in personal lives, in businesses, maybe even in policymaking. It could even influence how we teach critical thinking and statistics in schools, making us a more rationally calibrated population overall.
That's a huge potential shift. But with great power comes great responsibility. What ethical guardrails absolutely need to be in place for such a powerful, intimate technology?
The ethical considerations are profound, and we need to build in robust safeguards right from the start. Autonomy is number one. We must prevent these AIs from subtly nudging you towards external corporate agendas or outcomes that benefit the AI provider rather than you. Strict independence, transparency about algorithms and business models, maybe even regulatory oversight similar to financial fiduciaries, these will be critical. Privacy, as we said, is non-negotiable. Ironclad safeguards for your most intimate data health, finances, relationships are essential. This might involve pushing computation locally onto your device whenever possible, or using advanced anonymization and aggregation techniques. You must retain full control. We also have to actively address unequal access. There's a real risk this technology could widen the gap between those who can afford sophisticated decision support and those who can't. Striving for broad availability, perhaps through open source initiatives or publicly funded services, will be vital to ensure fairness. Accountability is another key piece. While the AI assists, you remain ultimately responsible for your decisions. Clear disclaimers are needed. But transparency in the AI's logic is also crucial, so if a decision does go wrong, you and perhaps the developers can understand why and learn from it. And finally, the AI must recognize its limits when it comes to deep moral values. For incredibly complex ethical dilemmas like, say, a whistleblowing situation, the AI's role should be to help structure the dilemma, clarify the stakes and competing values, perhaps offer different ethical frameworks, but never to decide for you. It must know when to step back. The potential social implications are immense, fewer catastrophic personal errors, more individual and societal resilience. But the challenge is achieving this while avoiding new forms of groupthink and ensuring we maintain diversity in choices and perspectives. #tag outro.
So let's wrap up this deep dive. We started by acknowledging this fascinating paradox. Our brains are these amazing natural Bayesian prediction machines. Yet our conscious system too often struggles with complexity, gets lazy, falls prey to biases, making truly probabilistic thinking in the real world incredibly difficult for us. But we've explored how AI, designed really thoughtfully as a genuine cognitive partner, could radically extend your System 2 capabilities, guiding your intuition, refining your judgment.
And crucially, this isn't about reducing your rich, complex, messy human life to just a set of sterile numbers. Not at all. It's about finding powerful ways to integrate objective evidence, probabilistic insights, with your deepest personal values, your unique narrative, your sense of meaning. The AI can handle the heavy lifting, the grunt math of probabilities, freeing you up, freeing you to be more creative, more strategic, maybe more empathetic, and ultimately more aligned in the decisions you make. It's really about combining that data-driven humility, acknowledging uncertainty, with profound personal meaning.
So here's a final thought for you to take away. Imagine carrying a kind of hyper-personalized forecast with you, not just for the weather, but for your most crucial choices in love, in health, in your career. Probabilities presented not as cold, hard commands, but as wise, empathetic guides, helping you navigate the fog.
This future, where probabilistic thinking becomes less of a struggle and more of an everyday art, accessible to everyone with AI as a partner, it holds a truly hopeful promise, I think. It's a future where you might approach the inherent uncertainty of life not with paralyzing fear, but with greater clarity, confidence, and a deeper, more grounded rationality, allowing you perhaps to navigate whatever comes next with just a little more wisdom and maybe a little less regret.